What's going on, folks? So, I don't know how much I have to say it, but holy Jesus Christ, week 11, it's like the last 3 weeks have just been, 3 or 4 weeks have been insane. So from the AFC standpoint, and these are, again, just my notes, from the AFC standpoint, the bottom 5 seeds are just wide open for any team to jump in with a few good weeks of play and some others bad. Which right now, the way the weeks have been going is entirely possible. I mean, entirely possible. And we'll go over what the playoff picture looks like once I'm done with all this. The NFC is honestly where I'm more confused. Like, there's a lot of interest with the AFC because it's so wide open. But the NFC is far more confusing to me. Like, early on, there were just 5 absolutely dominant teams that just looked like they just weren't going to give up any kind of space and that they were going to be fighting each other tooth and nail at the end of the season. And right now, by record, it still looks that way. But you've got the confusing top-seeded teams, the Cardinals, the Packers, the Bucks, the Cowboys. Those are all the number 1 teams for their division, and honestly, they're all 4 hurting my fucking head right now. And then you've got the Rams also hurting my fucking head right now, and then behind them is this mass of anything could happen. I don't know. I like the NFC, like pretty much most of the division leaders are locks at this point. Like, unless something really insane just happens, like the division leaders just go on horrible losing streaks, I just don't see anybody catching up, I mean, the Rams and the Cardinals could swap if the Rams just go on a run and the Cardinals fall the fuck apart. But aside from that, like the North, unless the Packers just go on, I mean, what, a 7-game losing streak, 6-game losing streak, and the Vikings don't? I mean, come on. The NFC is so confusing right now. So let's just jump into this. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat. My allergies are kicking. Packers at Falcons. Patriots at Falcons. Patriots 25, Falcons 0. I have been saying this for fucking weeks upon weeks upon weeks. If you scheme for what the Falcons are, you will beat them. The Falcons are a pass-only team at best. And Jesus Christ, did Belichick and his boy come in and fucking scheme for that, to say the fucking least. They proved it with ease, obviously. Their defensive scheme, in my opinion, because I watched this game from beginning to end, and their defensive scheme just seemed perfect. I mean, it seemed nearly flawless. And their offensive scheme was honestly right on the money. Not perfect, but it was good enough. Especially for what they did defensively. Holy Jesus. I mean, I'm going to say this, and I was talking to my kid about this during the preseason, that I thought if Mac Jones really came into the league like he looked in college, that he was probably going to be the best of the rookie quarterbacks this season, coming out of the draft. And you got to give the kid credit, man. For the most part, he has got to be the most poised rookie quarterback out of this year's class, without question. I mean, just without question. He looks like they've got him schemed up perfectly on this team. They're playing to his positives, they're steering away from his negatives, and they're basically keeping him on a script so he can learn at a positive pace. I mean, fucking Belichick did it with Brady, and look at what Brady turned into. I'm not saying that Tom Brady is not a gifted fucking quarterback by any means, but you can't possibly say that Belichick and his scheming had nothing to do with that. Belichick took a fucking 6th-round draft pick in Tom Brady, who had basically an inability of movement, and helped mold the guy into what is now considered to be the greatest of all time quarterback. And I don't dispute that. Tom Brady is an amazing fucking quarterback. So personally, I think that if they can keep this pace with Mac Jones, I mean, is he going to be Tom Brady? No, probably not. But is he going to be a very competitive piece for the Patriots to grow on? Oh, fucking absolutely. Absolutely. The dude is stepping up and seemingly growing every single fucking week. He makes a few mistakes here and there, but it's nothing that they can't overcome offensively or defensively. So this is a sure sign that this is a really good spot for his future as of right now. Will it continue? Don't know. Injuries can happen. Bad seasons can happen. Your offensive line can get fucked up. I mean, all sorts of things can happen to change it. But right now, excuse me, Mac Jones looks good. So on to the Falcons. Again, I've said this time and time again that this team is nearly a pass-only team for the most part. And after very intently watching this game, because I was watching it for the Patriots defense, for Mac Jones and his poise, and then honestly the Falcons as to why in the fuck they're such a pass-heavy team, aside from, Matty Ice as their quarterback. Well, you know what? You put an offensive line in front of this guy and he could be Matty Ice all over again, but right now, no. After watching this game very intently, I can't even fathom how the fuck they're even a good passing team. I mean, this was a fucking dismal performance by the O-line, to say the least. Matt Ryan, if he had time at all, could barely stay in the fucking pocket. They couldn't fucking barely run the ball. And to ice the cake, their backup comes in at the end of the game and throws an interception almost immediately. Then their rookie comes in after that because they didn't want to put the backup back in. And his first fucking pass, he throws an interception to finish the fucking game off when it's already lost. I mean, top to bottom. Both sides of the ball. All three sides of the ball. This was just a fucking joke. An absolutely abysmal performance overall. They were just outclassed in every way by the Patriots in this game. Doesn't surprise me. Ravens at Rams. Ravens 16, Rams. I'm sorry. My God, I can't even get the team names. Ravens at Bears. Ravens 16, Bears 13. And this was one of my games of interest because of the Ravens team issues. Now, me putting in the note of Raven team issues was before I even knew that Lamar Jackson wasn't even going to be playing. They found out that morning. Here's the troubling thing to me. No Lamar Jackson due to a quick non-COVID related illness, and honestly, I didn't see a major difference considering their performances as of late. Hundley comes in and literally just looked like Lamar Jackson light. It's a really sad thought, too, if you think about it, because Lamar Jackson is actually a very, very gifted athlete. And truthfully, wow. I mean, it wasn't amazing. It really wasn't. It just wasn't. Their team has been so fucking bipolar, mostly due to injuries or just weird situations. And it's really their defense that's been on the more bipolar side of things. Their offense is, well, I guess the offense really does kind of fit the bipolar bit too, because they're either explosive as fuck and just dominating teams, or they're unbalanced and seemingly out of time. And in my opinion, they just eked out a win on this game. That's really what it was. So, I mean, yay for them for getting the win, keeping their spot, but, or keeping their divisional lead, but that's about it. I mean, so the Bears, Justin Fields goes out with a rib injury. Thankfully, it sounds like it's just bruised ribs, not broken, so that's good for them. And then here comes Carrot Top to the rescue. Oh, too soon. Yeah. All the people that were pissed about Andy Dalton being named the starter at the beginning of the season, then they get Justin Fields in, and he doesn't really do anything better other than run. And then Dalton comes back in to save the game. I mean, Fields wasn't playing good before he got hurt anyway. But, no. Sorry, Dalton didn't come in and save the game. They lost. I mean, not badly, but they lost. This team has so many fucking issues that, I mean, they basically almost stole the game away from a team trying to find its identity and stay in the playoffs, or at least stay in their present playoff position. They kind of snuck back and tried to stay in it, but the Ravens just came out and got the win. This was an ugly game. It was just ugly. Battle of the backups, whatever. Packers at Vikings. Now, I will be the first to admit what I'm going to say in here pertains to me too. Because I actually had to go back and look at the stats on the Vikings. Because I've been sleeping on this team a little bit too. For good reason in spots, but I've been sleeping on them too. So the Packers 31, Vikings 34. Wow. I did not actually see the Packers struggling against the Vikings defense. I really didn't. I can say that although the Packers made a rally towards the end of the game to get back in it and get ahead, they certainly didn't have enough of a dominant defense that they've had in the past few weeks. They just didn't. It's like last week's offense showed up for the first half and then they woke up, you know? Aaron Rodgers, I get he's playing with a toe injury. He says it's not turf toe. I don't know. I mean, he looked mobile at times and then looked immobile at others. His passes looked decent. That bomb of a fucking touchdown, that fucking 53-yard fucking first play from scrimmage in the fourth quarter, just outside of 2 minutes to put them ahead in the game was just beautiful. I mean, absolutely fucking where that goddamn ball needed to be. 100%. May not have been 53, but it was a hell of a play. A hell of a fucking play. But sadly, it just wasn't enough to finish out the game. And it really looked like it was going to be. Because defensively, at the end of the game, they looked like they were just going to bear down on Kirk Cousins and just bury his ass. So, Vikings, truthfully, this was a lucky win in the end. I will give them that. They let the Packers get back into the game to tie it. And good for them. Because, I mean, this potentially looked like it was going to go to overtime and another fucking Vikings loss. Because that's been the story of the Vikings season. Going to late in the game and either lose the game at the very fucking end on a single score or going to overtime and lose. The Vikings are just all about keeping these close games this season. And I don't know why. I mean, they look horrible in this game, but they didn't look great defensively. Offensively, they actually look pretty fucking good. So good on them for coming out with this win, but considering that at least half of their games have come down to game-ending drives, that's not good. And game-ending drives is in good or bad, like win or loss. The one thing I truthfully saw was the defense actually didn't look terrible in this one, at least for the first half. Given how explosive this team is getting more by the week, I'm honestly surprised that teams are sleeping on the Vikings as much as they are, as well as the media and myself. They've got a real shot at securing the bottom end spot in the playoffs if they keep up this pace, because there's other teams in the NFC right now that are just continuing to fall, and that's a good thing for the Vikings if they can keep this up. So, next game, Colts at Bills. Game of interest for all of the Bills' woes and woeful up and down games. So the Colts made a statement that they were going to come out to this game and they were going to give it everything that they had. I'll be damned if they didn't do just that. Colts 41, Bills 15. Damn. I mean, this was a fucking street fight beatdown on the Bills. They literally ran the ball down the collective throats of the Bills defense, who was obviously not up for the task. They only threw for 106 yards and 1 touchdown, but rushed for 264 yards with 6 different fucking players and 5 touchdowns on the ground. I mean, damn, what a beating. The defense absolutely beat up the Bills offense. If the Colts can keep up their momentum the way they're going, I could see them being a team to keep an eye on going into the bottom end of the playoffs. So, the super wild card weekend thing. Yeah, I could see them kind of be in trouble. I really could. So the Bills, look, when you cough up the fucking ball 4 times and allow 264 yards on the fucking ground, but only 107 passing, do you really think that you're going to win this fucking game? I mean, how the hell do you have a roster this fucking good and look this bad? I've been saying the same thing about the Chiefs' offense throughout this season as well, but at least they're showing minor signs of improvement here and there. And honestly, the Bills look like they're regressing. One week they're great against a shit team, and then they come in against another lesser team and get the shit stomped out of them. Josh Allen went 21 of 35 for 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And then Trubisky comes in and throws another interception, obviously towards the end. Plus, they lost a fumble and then barely pulled out 91 yards of rushing, which certainly does not help the passing game whatsoever. I don't know what the fuck is going on with this team right now, but it's just not good. They're just way too up against the mediocre to bad teams, and they're just way too down on the good teams that are really trying to make a push, you know? So, I don't know. The Bills are a fucking mess right now. So, the Lions at the Browns. Lions 10, Browns 13. So, the Lions, look, they still haven't won a game. They got a tie. They haven't won. But just when you think that Jared Goff is bad, then throw the backup in to make yourself feel better, I guess, because, about having Goff as your starter. Tim Boyle went 15 of 23 for 77 yards and 2 picks. But they rushed for 168 yards, which is something to take away as a positive, I would guess. I would say that they had a great defensive stand against the Browns, but honestly, they're a fucking mess right now. So this was more the Browns shooting themselves in the foot left and right, and that defense just not doing anything really amazing. The Browns, this was literally one of those weird no defensive games. I don't know what to make of this. When both teams literally come away with a metric ton of rushing yards, but neither team can clear 14 fucking points. I mean, what the fuck? Seriously, what the fuck? Mayfield went 15 of 29 for 176 yards, one touchdown, 2 picks, but they rushed for 184 yards. So the Lions had 168 and the Browns had 184. It's like 350 fucking yards of rushing between two teams, and neither team could clear 14 fucking points. I mean, the Browns defense stood up just good enough to get the win, but this was an ugly, ugly fucking game. Next game, Washington football team at the Panthers. Washington 27, Panthers 21. Another game of interest for me because I wanted to see if the Panthers could continue from, kind of build off of last week. Because they didn't look terrible last week. They didn't. I mean, let's look. Panthers last week. Yeah, I mean, they didn't look bad at all. They beat the fucking Cardinals, for Christ's sake. So, yeah, they didn't look bad at all. So, Washington, I said it early in the season that this team had a great defense, and this was actually a pretty good showing of that. Even with all the injuries, they didn't look terrible against a team that's coming in with talent and some juice from their win last week. But the story that I find far more interesting is the offense. I don't know if Heineke just finally got his head out of his ass with the news that Fitzpatrick was just out, or if he finally realized that he's been playing like ass, listening to people, but 2 weeks in a row, he's actually played very efficient and good. He went 16 of 22 for 206 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Very, very off of Heineke's script this season. And they rushed for 190 yards against a pretty damn good defense. So good on him, honestly, for keeping the heat on the Panthers and forcing them into a last-minute stand to get the win. That's what it was. So the Panthers, Cam Newton is home, named as the starter, and boy, honestly, this is what they needed. If it weren't for some bad reads on that last drive from Cam, rather than trying to run away from the pass rush out of instinct, they probably could have had a shot at this one because he had a couple of quick dump-off passes that he could have made, but for some reason he just tried to run out of them. I mean, that's just kind of Cam's thing. It's a lot like Michael Vick used to be, but just nowhere near as explosive, in my opinion. I think Vick was just more explosive just because of his size and his ability to cut, to where Cam isn't really a cut guy, but he's more of just, he's fucking big and he's really fucking hard to take down, and he's got good vision when he's running, but that last drive, not so much. He was trying to pop out in bad positions. Truthfully, in my opinion, I think the defense is honestly what came up short here. That and that offensive last drive, I'll give you that. Cam went, 21 of 27 for 189 yards, 2 touchdowns, rushed for another one, and they rushed for a total of 111 yards. If the defense would have held better, this would have been a very, very winnable game. But they just didn't. A game that I honestly thought I could have cared less about, and it ended up being rather impactful. Texans at the Titans. Texans 22, Titans 13. What? Like, I didn't even think that was a possibility, okay? I just didn't. I didn't even remotely think that this was going to be a possibility. But it was. So like I told people at the beginning of the season, Tyrod Taylor could be a difference maker, especially with everything that's been going on with their quarterback nonsense. Tyrod Taylor is actually a very good player. He's just had some really bad luck. But I said that he could be a difference maker for the team to stand any chance with all the nonsense that's going on with the organization, all the cap problems they've got, the salary issues, just the injuries, the trade-offs, just, the coaching problems. The Texans are they're a mess. Okay, they really are. But Tyrod Taylor's not a bad player, and he's got a little spark in him. Now, this game, he goes against the division leader and goes 14 of 24 for 107 yards. But he rushed for 2 touchdowns, and they rushed overall for 83. Not exactly what you call dominance from an offense at all, but enough to keep the Titans at bay. This was honestly this was more of a fair defense taking advantage of an opposing offense, just literally shooting them in the foot repeatedly. Either shooting themselves in the foot repeatedly, I should say. This doesn't scream that the Texans are back by any means, because they're not. But this is something positive. They can hold their heads up high that they took down the present, AFC South leader. That's something. It's definitely something that they can walk away from with their heads up. The Titans. This is what happens. No Derrick Henry and a major lack of a running attack is exactly what the cause is of where my worries were. I'm sorry, who the hell is scared of a 36-year-old Adrian Peterson, and then their number 2 back, I can't even remember his fucking name right now. He's no real threat in comparison to what Derrick Henry is. Those two combined don't scare anybody. They just don't. And trying to build a play-action game off of a running game that doesn't scare anybody ain't gonna do shit. And that being said, as I've said before, if you take Tannehill, if you let Tannehill off of this play action script that he's become very comfortable with, his old Dolphins ways of being extremely careless with ball handling will show every fucking time. And they did. They did for sure. Tannehill went 35 of 52 for 323 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 fucking interceptions. They rushed for 103 yards, but you cough up the ball 5 total times in a game, there's just nothing that's going to outweigh that. And that's what happened. They got the shit stomped out of them by a mediocre defense at best. It's just what happens. 49ers at Jaguars. 49ers 30, Jaguars 10. The 49ers, they beat the beatable team. It's what I expect from a decent defense and a decent offense. I personally see the insane potential that this team has under the right set of circumstances, but for this season, I just don't see it. Yes, they're in the thick of it in regards to the playoff berths, but I personally don't see them making a long run if they make the postseason. There's just a mountain that they've literally put in front of themselves that they've got to be able to climb over and then jump into a hole that they've dug for themselves and then climb out of that one too. They've just had a really, really fucked up series of unfortunate events with injuries and just bad games, and I just don't see them sustaining a winning record well enough into the postseason. I just don't see it. Not this year. So Jaguars, look, at this point, this season's a lost cause. This comes down to either them just trying to upset good teams when they can, just to make things interesting, or do the best that they can to build on what they got to try to prep for next season. The Jags are just a fucking hot mess. So the Dolphins at the Jets. Dolphins 24, Jets 17. So Tua looked decent. I'll give him that. He actually did look decent. He was efficient with his completion percentage. I'll say that. And that's definitely a good thing. He went 27 to 33. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty fucking good. 273 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. But they did rush for 117 yards. Defensively, this wasn't a terrible week for them to have to try and face, this team and at least try to feel good, This was a very winnable game, and they won. So, yeah, good for them. It's the truth. So, Jets fans, yet again, every fucking year I want to apologize to you. I really do, because I think you guys are just so overlooked between the Giants, which really aren't any better, and then the Bills, which are a hot fucking mess this year. It's like New York fans are just getting shafted this year with some really fucked up shit. So, Joe Flacco comes in as the starter, which is now their 4th starter in this season, and their 4th starter in as many weeks. Yeah. He at least looked efficient in comparison to what this team has had thus far this season. He went 24-39 for 291 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, and they amazingly eked out 102 yards. Sadly, like the Jaguars, this season is pretty much toast for them, and they need to build on what they can and start prepping for the next season. I really don't see any kind of ship being righted at all enough to do anything with the rest of this season. The truly concerning thing for me is that, in my opinion, they've probably got one of the top 10 best defensive-minded coaches as their head coach. And the one thing that this team is lacking more than anything is defense. Either the personnel is just absolutely terrible, or Saleh has got to get this team right next season. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if he comes in next season and this team looks like this, he ain't going to have a job. Because the one thing that I think everybody knows is that New York fans, and this is no knock, but New York fans are just not forgiving at all. And most especially Jets fans, because that organization has been a fucking hot mess for, 8 years now. Even then, they've been a mess for a long time, but it's been, 7 or 8 years since they've looked even decent? It is what it is. Saints at Eagles. Saints 29, Eagles 40. Another game of interest. Honestly, due to the Saints' issues. Mostly offensively. I'll say that. Mostly offensively. Yeah, they got some defensive injuries, but mostly on the offense is where my my concerns were, and they weren't unfounded. The Saints. Well, I can honestly say that I didn't expect anything different, truthfully. Offensively, Trevor Siemian, I just find that there's a lot of erratic play, and he's just not to be trusted. And this defense is what's absolutely hurting my head. They literally went up against a team that is going to run the ball at you, and they still gave up 242 fucking yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. That's a huge problem. Plus, they coughed up the ball 3 fucking times. That doesn't help either. The Eagles, they're going to run, and they ran a lot. They also harassed the living shit out of the Saints offense, and it was just enough to keep them out of reach in this game. They executed the game plan that they wanted, and they brought home a win. Is this a playoff team? Possibly. But, is this a Super Bowl team? Probably not. There's going to have to be an insane level of circumstances for the Eagles to even remotely think that the Super Bowl is within their grasp with their present play. I'm sorry, you can't literally just play on the ground and have an okay defense and think that you're going to make a Super Bowl run. Would it be a feel-good ordeal for them to get to the playoffs, possibly win a game, and then have to pack it up? That'd be a feel-good considering how the season started. Yeah, probably. So the Bengals at the Raiders. Another game of interest for both the teams, honestly. The Bengals have had some up and down shit going on, and so have the Raiders. Bengals 32, Raiders 13. So for the Bengals, it's a ray of sunshine for the Bengals, I suppose. I told people coming into the preseason that, this is a team that was built to win, and they certainly did that in this game. I'm just curious about the longevity of the success in this season, given their recent up and down performances. This was certainly an up, because as I've said, the Raiders just aren't a punk team. Down, yes, but they never really seem out of it, It's like no matter how bad this season looks, the Raiders just, man, they're there to fuck your day up if they can. For the Raiders, honestly, I think Derek Carr's post-game interview probably stated it the best, that he's tired of being in the circumstance of talking about losing games because he knows what kind of team that they've got, and he's just pissed off about it. And he's got every right to be. I mean, granted, was he part of the problem? Yes. But is their scheming part of the problem? Yes. Is their personnel playing up to expectations? No. So I don't put this fully on Derek Carr. I don't. I think the guy has actually got a lot of potential, but my God. I mean, it's like he's under the thumb of an insanely erratic organization. I don't know. I feel bad for him, honestly. But I can tell you this. They seem very disorganized and very disjointed. But not out of it just yet. But if they aren't careful, they will be quite rapidly. The Cowboys and the Chiefs, as always, game of interest for me. But I do want to preface it with this. I first want to say that this was probably the worst ref game that I've seen this season that I've personally watched. I know there's probably somebody out there that's going to say that they've seen others that have been bad, but this was terrible. I mean, this was an atrociously called game. And there were bad calls or no calls against both teams personally. McCarthy and Reed were just losing their fucking minds. Reed always looks more composed. McCarthy's a very fiery guy that'll just scream bloody murder if he wants to. Reed looked like he was going to bite his lips off. He was just chewing on his fucking lips, just like crazy. But I think both coaches had every right to be pissed about how the refs were in this one. This was a terribly fucking ref game. Horrible. That being said, Cowboys 9, Chiefs 19. Holy hell. Who the fuck saw that coming? Just wow. The defense was certainly up to the task, and they showed that in this game. But the offense crumbled under pressure so badly. 3 field goals from the number 1 offense in the NFL right now. This leaves concerns with my past thoughts of their game after Dak's return was a fluke. Dak just couldn't get comfortable. And so what I mean basically is that I was a little concerned that one win that they've had since Dak has been back was a fluke, or was it really just them rebounding? And right now that win looks like a fluke because they looked fucking horrible. But we'll get into the but as to why they looked horrible. But this was going against a potential team of contention at this point, and they literally just fell apart like burnt leaves on the offensive side of the ball. I understand that Amari Cooper was out with illness, but Lamb, he just looked like he was completely out of place taking the number 1 receiver spot as it was, and then he went out at the very end of the first half, with a fucking concussion. The O-line looked completely out of sorts. Yes, I understand their left tackle was out, and that's a big fucking thing for the left tackle to be out on this team. It really is. I mean, that's a spot that's got to be there. But that O-line just looked bad. It's like they just went into the game just not really understanding what they were up against. And Dak took hits for it. This was just a piss poor performance offensively. I mean, I honestly, personally had them to win this game. I didn't ever really seem, I mean, they didn't really ever seem to be in it at all, and it really surprised me. So, for the Chiefs, if this wasn't a statement game from the defense, I don't know what the hell would be. I will say this, though. Aside from the no-call pass interference that was obviously not called on the Chiefs, that would have likely resulted in the Cowboys touchdown, or at least putting the Cowboys in the red zone, I still don't think that the Cowboys were going to come out of this one with a win. Closer game, yes, but a win, no. The Chiefs' defense was literally just smothering their offense so bad. It's like I've been saying that if they just put Chris Jones back at defensive tackle, that he'd be such a dominant force once again, and that's proof positive. It really is. I mean, it's 100% proof positive. Look at this game. He fucking harassed the center of that line, and it opened up the outside for Ingram and Frank Clark to just go wild. I mean, what do you say? Seriously. Now, I will say that I found in this game yet again that there's a problem with the offense and their lack of performance. And I have a feeling that if they don't right this, that it's going to come back and bite them in their ass. Mahomes with that strip ball, with him trying to avoid pressure. I mean, he's got to learn to tuck that fucking ball when he's running away from it. He's got to. I know he's always looking downfield, but for fuck's sake, when you're literally coming up to the line of scrimmage and you're about to pass the line of scrimmage or just get past the line of scrimmage, you got to learn to tuck that ball. You got to stop being so loosey-goosey with that sumbitch. The pass that Kelsey should have caught that honestly just bounced off of his fucking hands and just luckily landed right in the fucking, the waiting hands of a safety. These are plays that shouldn't have happened, but they've been happening all season. So they got to shore up all these dumbass problems that they got. These are all fixable things that they're doing right now, and they're literally hurting themselves. Yeah, they won this game and they won it dominantly. But they could have been so much more dominant in this game and they weren't. And if they don't shore this up, this is going to be a real quick playoff run for them. And it's going to end with some really, really tragic results, okay? So the Cardinals Seahawks. Cardinals 23, Seahawks 13. Game of interest because it was a big chance for the Cardinals to come in and rebound against a pretty dominant defense. And truthfully, it's exactly what they did. I mean, yeah, we can talk about the up or down performances without Murray as quarterback. Yeah, they won. And that's what I expected, honestly, but I truthfully would have expected a far higher scoring game with Murray at the helm. And I don't think anybody could really disagree with that because he's just so much more of a dynamic player. I mean, Colt McCoy is just Colt McCoy. He is what he is. Hopefully he will be back soon from that ankle injury because this is just not going to sustain itself for very long and may risk that number 1 seed if the Packers can light it back up and, and they keep with this up and down week to week play shit. The Seahawks. I mean, coming into week 11, if they couldn't pull out a win, this was pretty much going to spell disaster for their playoff chances, and that's exactly where I think they are at this point. The way this team is playing shows that this team is just not ready for the playoffs this season. It's just a sad truth. They've got the defensive potential to do it, but the offense is just a fucking mess. The O-line just seemingly can't protect shit. Russ is rusty and not looking good. There's just too many damning factors that just have put them in a hole too early in this season. And it's just really spelled disaster for the end of it. Steelers at Chargers. Steelers 37, Chargers 41. Game of interest yet again. And honestly, it's because these are two teams that are in the hunt for a playoff spot. And in need of some help to get there. So the Steelers, what a fucking mess. Okay, they were literally outplayed 3 out of the 4 quarters and then scored 23 in the 4th quarter. Okay? And they made a rally to get ahead, but then left enough time for the Chargers to get a chance. And then they blow a fucking coverage on a monster 53-yard touchdown to lose the lead. And then they shoot themselves in the foot with penalties to end the fucking game. This is not Steelers ball, man. I mean, this is just isn't. Tomlin's got to get control of this team right now because, I mean, they're right on the cusp of being out of the playoff race. They really are. And this looks really, really bad. This may have been the proverbial nail in the coffin for the playoffs if a few other teams continue to improve and stay, or at least stay the same. Because the Steelers, they look good, then they look bad, then they look good, then they look bad, and they don't go away per se, but they don't always really look good, and they always look like they're right on the cusp of losing games. I mean, look at their game with the Lions. That should have been a fucking smackdown, and it ended in a fucking tie. So the Chargers, yet again, we see a bipolar performance team. And they gave an epic beatdown to a squad for 3 out of 4 of the quarters. And if it weren't for a blown coverage, honestly, they'd have lost this game. There's so much talent on the Chargers. And, there's so much talent on the Chargers team as a whole. And I just can't put my finger on the singular issue aside from either scheming or execution that's giving them so many fits week to week. I mean, I just don't know what to expect. If they can't find a way to sustain the first 3 quarters of play of this game throughout an entire game for the rest of the season, they're not going to go very far, but if they can find a way to sustain it, they could really make a run at this because they're a fucking dangerous team. Right now, I don't see it. I don't see them sustaining it because they're just all over the fucking place. They get it tightened up though. Dude, they could do it. They could, but damn, they're rough right now. I mean, good on them for getting the win, but too close, man. Too close. Final game, Giants at Bucks. Giants 10, Buccaneers 30. Game of interest because of the scrappy Giants versus the beat up defense of the Buccaneers. I'm not surprised that given how depleted that this team is with injuries and just their general poor performances at times, but yet they still show sparks of good play at times too in games. They didn't look too terrible in the first half of this game. They kept the Bucs to 17 points and the game within one score, but the second half was just an absolute fucking mess. They couldn't seem to get anything right, and it just spelled disaster in the end. Pretty much a lost season at this point, but at least they have something to build on at this point as well, because this team has got some fire in them. They're just having completion issues. Like, they're having issues maintaining positive play. It's like they're half to half. You know, they get a good half, bad half. I don't really know how else to describe it. They're just weird. I don't think Joe Judge is going to let that shit stand, though. I mean, he's 2 seasons in, and he's not got a winning record with him, but last season to this season, boy, they look scrappy as shit. Even losing, they look scrappy as hell. So the Bucs, yes, I did question them going into this game, given how beat up their defense has been, especially going into this game because of how scrappy the Giants have been. The first half, they just looked off their timing offensively and defensively. The second half, it's like they woke the fuck up. I mean, no scores allowed, forced some dumbass plays by the Giants, and given how scrappy the Giants have been off and on this season, I'd say that the Bucs are still definitely very much in the hunt right now. And if they can get healthy, they may be set for a hell of a postseason run. So let's talk about the present playoff standings at the end of Week 11. So for the AFC, amazingly, the Titans are still in first place at 8-3. The Ravens are right behind them at 7-3. Patriots have now jumped into the third spot at 7-4, outing the Bills, and the Chiefs are at 7-4. I think the offense has got to improve to stay in it for the Chiefs, though. Then you've got the Bengals at number 5. No surprise, honestly. Good team, but can they hold it? Chargers at number 6. Bipolar from one week to the next. God only knows where this goes. It's like I said, the bottom 5 positions of the playoffs is wide open because you've got 7-4, 7-4, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4. The teams below them 5-4-1, 6-5, 6-5, 5-5. I mean, we're talking a half game to one full game out of being in contention for the teams on the bubble. But yeah, so the Bengals are at 6-4 in the 5 seed, Chargers are at 6-4 in the 6 seed, and the Bills are at the 7 seed with 6-4. They went from fucking they went from second place to third place to now 7th place in the playoff race in a matter of weeks. Jesus Christ. Just like the Chiefs went from being on the bubble to being in the wild card hunt to all of a sudden now they're leading the division and in 4th place. Interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. So, the NFC. And like I said, I find the NFC to be very interesting because there's so much contention. And given what the teams look like, there's a lot of contention all the way across the board. Cardinals are at 9-2. Packers are at 8-3. Buccaneers now 7-3 in 3rd place. And the Cowboys have now slipped to 4th place at 7-3. But the Cardinals, if they don't get Murray back, they're up and down and up and down and up and down. So they could very easily lose that 1st seed. The Packers, up and down, up and down, up and down. They could very well lose the 2nd seed. The Buccaneers, up and down and up and down and up and down. They could very well lose the fucking 3rd seed. But I don't think they will because I think the Saints are just going to keep falling the fuck off if they don't straighten themselves out. So I think the Bucs are safe. I think the Bucs are safe in the top 4. But they could slip to the 4 seed. The Cowboys, up and down for the last 3 weeks. I mean, more than that with Dak being out for the injury, but prior to Dak's injury, this team was up. And then just all of a sudden, Dak gets hurt, team goes down, obviously, and then Dak comes back, and then they're up, down, and it's just, what? So, I mean, the Cowboys are, I personally think that this order is where it's going to stay if Murray comes back. I think it's going to be Cardinals, Packers, Bucks, Cowboys. But beyond that, I think the Rams will hold on to the 5 seed as long as they don't do anything else stupid. They're at 7-3 in the 5 seed. I think they're going to hang on to that. But they're 2 games off. The 49ers are 2 games off from getting in the playoffs, and the Rams are 2 games off from completely falling the fuck out of the playoffs. Don't know. We'll see. And then here comes the big switcheroo. Here comes the fucking Vikings. Here comes the Vikings, man. Can they sustain it? That's the hiccup. But the Vikings at 5-5. And then the Saints have just fallen and fallen and fallen. Now they're in the 7 seed at 5-5, and they're falling week by week. I think the 49ers, Eagles, or Panthers have a much better chance of jumping into that 7 seed than the Saints holding it. But if the Vikings don't sustain and they keep doing this last-minute horseshit like they have been, I think the Vikings could lose that position too. So I think the bottom 2 positions are really, really questionable because everybody is just right there, 5-5, 5-5, 5-5, 5-6, 5-6, 4-6. I don't know. It's a weird, weird, weird season, and I think it's amazing. I think it's amazingly interesting. I'll put it that way. So that's been the Week 11 evaluation and standings. So, folks, catch you next week, all right?